Hey guys, welcome back to War Paint Off-Road. I'm Dan. If you're new to this channel, you probably haven't heard me talk a ton about the front bumper on War Paint. I get a lot of messages about where that bumper came from, so I'm gonna quickly talk to you guys about it, and I'm gonna let you know why it's gotta go. So this bumper was on the Jeep when I bought it. It is a Chinese branded bumper, and it originally was a full width, came out quite a bit farther. And when you had factory axles, the tires didn't stick out as far as they do now. So I actually modified it, I cut it, I chopped it, I used the extra steel that was on it to make it into a stubby, and then I added the tubing to it. So unfortunately, I'm not really 100% sure who makes it. It served me well. You know, a spot for a winch. It's perfectly fine. That's a 12,000 pound winch. I put it through its paces and it holds up just fine. But there's one big problem that I have with this bumper. The winch on this bumper is mounted above the frame rails because that gave it room to mount some fog lights below. I mean, it blocks a bunch of airflow through that grille. And we all know that these JKUs like to run a little bit hot. Restricting the airflow going through your radiator is never a good idea. So I'm gonna get rid of that bumper today. Now I'm gonna replace it with this bumper here. Now, once again, I have absolutely no idea who made it, but the cool thing about this bumper is that the winch plate is actually mounted down inside of it. You can find bumpers like that all over Facebook Marketplace and other places on the internet, used and cheap. I want it basically as wide as my frame rails. I don't want it much wider than that at all. So I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna do that. And then I'm gonna mount it on the rig. Yeah. That doesn't go as I thought it was gonna go. Make sure you stay tuned to the end and check out what else I had to do. Get my winch in there, and then in a future video, I'm gonna do a pretty cool modification to the grill called the Skully Mod. I'll talk about it later in this video if you're not sure what that is, but let's get to work. And the first step in making this bumper look cool is to remove the winch and get the old bumper off the rig. With the winch removed, it's time to dive on under here. We're just gonna disconnect the fog light wiring harness. That's pretty simple to do. I'm just gonna pull the plugs, and then at that point, start working on the nuts and bolts that hold this bumper on. Now, those can be pretty corroded. I live in the South where we don't have a lot of road salt or any road salt, but using a breaker bar made pretty quick work of loosening these up so I could spin them off. If you live in an area with lots of corrosion or road salt, you might wanna use some penetrant to help loosen them up. As you just saw, we got the bumper off. In real time here this morning, it probably took me about 35 minutes. Now I'm gonna pull this plastic piece off of here. We don't need it anymore. I'm gonna cut these braces off the frame and clean it up because it obviously just looks nasty on the bottom. If you look here, we have our frame. Now this is where you would normally cut a little bit off the frame to do a frame chop, and then you'd have brackets on your new bumper that would slide on and sandwich the frame and throw a bolt through it, or usually a few bolts through it. And if you look at your Jeep or even at this Jeep, where this piece here, where this bracket behind me actually extends past the frame, it's not that far past the frame. So I'm gonna cut down my new bumper so that it basically ends here and comes straight into the body. It basically comes in just on the inside of my blinker. And that's exactly what that Skully Mod is gonna do. Cut in across my fender, around my blinker, and basically come down so that my grill has a little bit of a different shape. I got those brackets cut off. We got some paint on there now. On the inside, here's where it mounts. So all this stuff over here, I'm gonna cut off. Gusset on the inside basically was just inside this edge on the bumper. So we're basically gonna follow that edge down to here. And then I marked a piece of tape, taking it straight back. And I bent it over the front so I could follow that line and make sure that it was relatively straight going all the way back. I might have to clean it up with a flap wheel when we're done. Actually, I guarantee you I will. But that's gonna get us pretty close to where we need to be as far as our cut marks so we can start getting ready to bolt it on the rig. After welding up some imperfections on the top side of this bumper from the previous owner cutting off a piece of tubing, the bumper was basically ready to be painted and then test fit. I was planning on actually just taking that bumper and bolting it onto the front of the rig. When I did, I was unhappy with how low it hung below the frame rails. Now I measured my old bumper from the top where the winch mounted down to the absolute bottom of the bumper, and it was only 6 inches long, so it actually still had a pretty good approach angle. Well, this bumper is 9 inches. Now I'm going to cut everything from here down off of this bumper and hopefully give me a little bit more ground clearance. The problem with that is that after I cut all that off, I'm gonna have to restructure the bottom of it and tie the winch plate in. This isn't as quick of a bumper swap as I had hoped it would be. It's a little bit more custom. We're gonna get to work so we can get it done. You saw me grind for about 3 seconds, and I basically have cut a line. This is everything I'm gonna cut off the bottom of the bumper here, right? I have it inverted. The problem is on this side of the bumper, I now need to cut this at the exact same height so I can lay a piece of plate across it and weld it all in, maybe add some gussets. Well, the problem with that becomes lining this edge up with something over here and up with that edge over there so that it's all straight and level. So in comes the cardboard envisioning tool. I'm actually gonna slide this pretty thick piece of cardboard in between my cut here all the way over. And when it makes contact with this, I'll draw a line, I'll cut it. And that at the end of the day will get me a very flat surface all the way across the bottom of this bumper, where then I can take a piece of steel plate, basically prep this to be welded, prep the steel plate to be welded, burn it in, and have a nice flat bottom and make my bumper about 3 inches shorter. So after using my high-dollar cardboard envisioning tool, making some marks and cutting it, you got a perfectly flat surface all the way across. So one of the cool things about working on Jeeps and building bumpers is the amount of steel I have laying around in this garage. And I happen to have a piece of steel right over here. I don't know how wide it's gonna be. I don't know that it's gonna fit. But we're gonna walk over, we're gonna lay it on top, check it out. Might be the perfect size.
That's what she said.
Hopefully it's not just that much too short.
That's what she said.
Oh my God, guys. Oh my God. Guys, look at this. Right on that edge, right? If I grind this off a little bit, I have a perfect exposed little edge there to weld on. Same thing all the way across the front. And same thing over here. This, guys, if this isn't fate, okay? It almost brings a tear to my eye how perfect this is. Now, it's a little bit too long, so obviously I'm gonna have to cut some off, but I talked about cutting some off over here anyway. So I'm gonna mark that up, get that cut, place it back on, and in, I don't know, YouTube magic, couple of seconds, let's see what the finished product looks like. All right, so we're back, and I painted the underside of this in Steel It. Now I've mentioned Steel It before on this channel, and Steel It is a nice paint to use because unlike traditional spray paint, when you're welding on it, it actually doesn't burn off and you can weld directly through it. Well, I'm not actually gonna touch any weld to the bottom side of this piece of steel here, but it is gonna get nice and hot, and I don't want the regular spray paint to burn off, exposing bare steel that's then gonna rust in the future. So coating it in Steel It gives it that protection. Let's fit it up and get it going. After mocking it up, I put several tack welds all around it to hold it in place. Then after finish welding all the way around the bumper, it was time to fit it up. There we have it. Much more of my grill exposed with that winch dropped down a little bit. I could relocate that winch control box and tuck it off to the side, give it even more room into the grill, but I think the look of this Jeep now, I think it just looks fantastic. I like how the bumper is even narrower than my last Stubby conversion. And guys, this can all be done for super cheap at home in your own garage with a little bit of time, a can of spray paint, and you can get your Jeep looking good and even maybe running a little bit cooler. Anyway, guys, thanks for the support. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe this video and get out there and build something.